I thought I knew my husband better than anyone, until I opened a folder he never meant for me to see. Started with something stupid. A late grocery run, a dead phone, and my husband's laptop open on the kitchen counter. That's all it took. I wasn't snooping. I was just bored, waiting for Instacart to confirm the oat milk he likes wasn't in stock again. The screen had gone black, but the light was still glowing softly from the keyboard, so I tapped the spacebar. Just muscle memory. No hesitation. We'd been married 7 years. I had his password before I had my driver's license renewed. What I didn't expect was that he'd been logged into an email I'd never seen before. Not his work one. Not his personal. Something else. No subject lines. Just a weird mix of numbers and letters for a name. No profile pic. The inbox was clean, too clean. And I don't know what made me do it, but I clicked sent. Only 2 messages. Both had the same file attached. A zip folder named November. And something about that name made my chest tighten. Our anniversary is in November. My heart started pounding. I should have stopped. Should have shut the screen and walked away. But I didn't. I opened it. And then I opened the folder inside. And what I found inside that tiny zip file shattered something in me I still haven't figured out how to put back together. There were images. Dozens of them. Not the kind of photos you find by accident. These were meticulously labeled, organized, time-stamped. The first thing I noticed was a photo of a hotel room. One I didn't recognize. Then a second. Then one of my husband. Smiling. With another woman. Not just 1, 2, 3. All dated within weeks of our last anniversary trip. While I'd been at home decorating our bedroom with candles and string lights, he'd been wherever this was. I clicked on one video, stupid, and the audio came on before I could mute it. His voice. Laughing. And not the kind of laugh I'd heard in months. It was lighter. Freer. I shut the laptop like it burned me. But it was too late. Because in that moment the entire foundation of my life tilted. You know how in movies they always say you feel cold when you find out someone cheated? I didn't. I felt heat. Rage. Shame. Confusion. All of it. All at once. I stood there in our kitchen, blinking at the cabinet door like it might swing open and hand me a better explanation. Like maybe there was another possibility. Maybe this was a prank. Maybe it was from years ago. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Except, I knew what I'd seen. And the worst part wasn't just that he'd betrayed me. It was that he was happy in those photos. He looked lighter. Like I was the weight he'd finally shrugged off. That's when I realized I didn't want to cry. I wanted to know everything. So I opened the laptop again. I clicked through every folder. There were more. Not just November. There was March, July, August. One labeled simply Never Show. Inside Never Show were voice memos. First they were just snippets. A laugh. A conversation in a car. Music in the background. Then a woman's voice. Not me. Younger. Slower. She called him by a name I'd never heard anyone use, Jamie. His name is James. No one has ever called him Jamie. She said it like she owned it. Like it was something sacred between them. Jamie, come back to bed. I stopped breathing. I clicked to the next memo. Jamie, I love it when you're like this. I clicked another. And another. One of them was just him whispering. I wish I could stay like this forever. I was shaking. Not crying. Not screaming. Just shaking. And then I heard the front door. He was home. I didn't even have time to close the screen. He walked in, shopping bag in hand, looking at me with that stupid, calm, everyday smile. Like nothing had changed. Like my world hadn't just caved in around me. Hey babe, he said. They were out of oat milk. I stared at him. Not him. Jamie. And I realized then I had no idea who I'd married. The man I thought I knew? The one who tucked my hair behind my ear in the mornings, who brought me tea when I was sick, who kissed my shoulder before leaving for work. He was a story I'd been telling myself for 7 years. And the real one? He was still standing in front of me, smiling, completely unaware that the lies had finally come loose. I opened my mouth, but I didn't say anything. Because I wasn't ready yet. I needed more. I needed to understand what else he was hiding. And more importantly, who else he'd become when I wasn't watching. Because that was the scariest part. Not that he cheated. but that he had a whole other version of himself I had never even met. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to him, next to Jamie, while he snored softly, his arm draped across my waist like some parody of intimacy. Like the version of him I found on that laptop hadn't just shattered every quiet memory I thought we shared. I watched the ceiling until the sun came up, trying to piece together a timeline. What had I missed? What had I ignored? Because let's be honest, I had ignored things. Late meetings. Business trips that popped up last minute. The weird scent of a different shampoo on his skin sometimes, too floral to be mine. But I never let myself question it. Because once you open that door you can't close it. Well, now it was wide open. And what I saw on the other side made me want to burn the whole house down. I waited until he left for work, kissed my forehead like always, still playing the part, and then I went back to the laptop. I wanted more. I needed more. I wasn't going to confront him with half answers and maybes. I needed everything. Every secret, every lie. I wanted to pull his double life into the light and watch it shrivel. I opened the encrypted files again, took screenshots, transcribed voice notes. I even backed everything up to a hard drive I bought during lunch break, tucked it beneath the false bottom of my jewelry box like it was radioactive. But the deeper I dug, the stranger it got. There were credit card charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, reservations at hotels I didn't recognize, Venmo payments to usernames that didn't make sense. One of them literally said, "For the silence," winking face. And then there were the emails. God, the emails. Some were short, quick exchanges between him and this other woman, who signed her name as L. Others were long, detailed, soul-bearing letters, like they were living some tragic, star-crossed affair. He called her his peace, his other home, his real life. Real life. What was I then? A dress rehearsal? That stung the most. Not the betrayal of flesh but of intimacy. The parts of him I thought were mine. His quirks, his inner thoughts, his midnight fears. He'd given them to someone else. And I started to wonder, had he ever given them to me? Or had I always just been convenient? I kept reading until my eyes blurred. And somewhere in the middle of that spiral I realized something else. This wasn't just one affair. It was layered, compartmentalized, strategic. There were patterns, different names, different cities, different versions of him. He wasn't just cheating. He was performing. He became whatever each woman needed him to be. Sweet, dominant, spiritual, detached. There was even one who called him Professor. She wasn't a student, thank God, but the roleplay was detailed enough to make my stomach churn. I kept thinking, who the hell are you? And then I found the calendar, hidden under a false folder titled Finances 2019. It wasn't financial at all. It was a travel calendar, color-coded, green for me, blue for her, red for others. He had an actual system. My mouth went dry. And somewhere around the middle of that calendar, right between a trip to Chicago and a week in Denver he told me was for work, I saw it. A tiny red dot labeled, Elle's birthday promise ring. Promise ring. I slammed the laptop shut, stood up too fast, and nearly threw up in the sink. He bought her a ring. I don't even have a new wedding band. Mine's been chipped for over a year. And he kept saying we'd replace it after the holidays. I stood in the kitchen, shaking, palms on the cold granite counter, trying to keep myself grounded. Then I heard something I hadn't planned for. A vibration. Then another. Not from the laptop. From the drawer beside me. His backup phone. He didn't know I knew about it. I'd only seen it once months ago, when he forgot to close the drawer fully before running out to the gym. I never touched it before. But now? Now I opened that drawer like it owed me blood. The phone lit up as soon as I picked it up. No passcode. Just a missed message notification. L. Still thinking about last weekend. You make me feel like the only woman in the world. Miss you already, Jamie, kiss mark. I stared at it for a long time. And then I called her. Not impulsively. Not emotionally. Just deliberately. I needed to hear her voice. It rang twice. Then, hello. Soft. Young. Maybe early 30s. Slight accent. French. I didn't speak. She said again, Jamie. I could hear city traffic in the background. A dog barking. Jamie? She asked one more time, this time softer. Are you okay? I hung up because I wasn't ready to speak yet. But I'd heard what I needed. She didn't know I existed. He hadn't told her. I wasn't the other woman. She was. And yet somehow we both were. That's when it clicked. I wasn't going to confront him tonight. No. I was going to become someone else. Someone who could smile over dinner. Someone who could kiss him goodnight. Someone who could look him in the eyes and pretend not to know. Because if Jamie could wear masks, I could too. And mine was going to be the last one he ever saw before it all fell apart. He came home that night with flowers. Peonies, my favorite. Or at least that's what he thought. I used to love them. Back when they meant something. Back when they weren't just apology placeholders for sins he hadn't even pretended to confess yet. Rough day? He asked, setting them in a vase like he was trying to water away his guilt. I smiled. A soft, tired one. Practiced. You could say that. He kissed my temple, lingered just long enough for the gesture to seem sincere, and then moved on, talking about how his meeting got rescheduled, how traffic was a nightmare, how he'd picked up Thai food on the way home because he knew I hadn't eaten. He played the part like a pro. He always had. And I let him. I sat across from him at the dinner table, sipping wine I didn't taste, nodding at jokes I barely registered, studying the way his eyes crinkled when he talked. I used to love that. The lines near his eyes. I thought they meant he was a good man. A kind one. Turns out they just meant he was very, very good at smiling. Jamie, I said casually, watching his fork freeze midair. He looked up. What? Nothing, I said quickly. Just slipped out. He blinked once, twice. And then smiled again. Haven't heard that in years. Liar. He reached for his glass, took a slow sip, and changed the subject. But I saw it, the brief flicker in his eyes. Not panic. But recognition. He knew. He just didn't know how much I knew. Not yet. The next few days I played it cool. Did the laundry. Cleaned the house. Kissed him goodbye in the mornings and welcomed him back in the evenings. We were the picture of marital harmony. But underneath I was building a map. I printed screenshots. Documented timestamps. Started cataloging phone numbers from his burner. I even tracked his location history through his Google account, which he hadn't logged out of in months. Every dot on that map told a story. A lunch here. A night there. A gap that didn't make sense when he said he was out of town, but his GPS showed he'd stayed in a hotel 20 minutes from our house. And then came the receipts. Literally. I found them in the pocket of one of his suit jackets. A dry cleaning stub from a place I'd never heard of. And underneath it, a folded receipt for a diamond necklace. Not a promise ring. A necklace. $1,800. Paid in cash. No gift bag. No box. Just paper and ink. That night, I asked him where he'd been last Saturday. He didn't flinch. Oh, I told you I had a team dinner. That new guy from accounting. He's going through a divorce or something. I nodded. Right. I forgot. He smiled. Everything okay? I reached across the couch and placed my hand on his. Perfect. Because here's the thing. I wasn't collecting this evidence for confrontation. I was collecting it for leverage. He didn't know it, but I'd already spoken to a lawyer. She was a friend of a friend. Low profile. Sharp as broken glass. When I showed her the file I'd created, screenshots, receipts, even a few recorded conversations, she didn't flinch. How do you want to play this? She asked. I told her the truth. I didn't want a messy emotional blow-up. I wanted control. I wanted him cornered. Speechless. Powerless. I want him to look at me, I said, and realize he bet on the wrong woman. She smiled. I can work with that. We started setting traps. Bank accounts I didn't think I had access to? She found ways in. Hidden assets? We flagged them. That business trip to Seattle last year? Turns out he'd booked it under a different name. She told me to play nice for another 2 weeks. So I did. I made his favorite meals. Wore the perfume he liked. Laughed at his recycled stories. All the while watching. Recording. Calculating. And then one afternoon something unexpected happened. A message from Elle. Not to him. To me. Came through Facebook. She must have found my profile by reverse searching one of the photos he'd taken. I never thought he was dumb enough to post them online, But there it was, a blurry background reflection in one of her Instagram selfies. Our living room. She wrote, "Hi, I think we need to talk. I didn't know about you. I swear." At first I stared at the screen stunned. Then I clicked into her profile. She was younger, yes. Maybe 31. But not some naive girl. She looked smart. Professional. A nurse judging by her work photos. Her captions were thoughtful, articulate. She wasn't the enemy. She was me 5 years ago. I replied, "Meet me. Tomorrow. Noon. Bluebird Cafe." She agreed. And I didn't sleep that night either. Because tomorrow was the day I'd start flipping the dominoes. Not one at a time, but all at once. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting by the window, nervously stirring a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Her hair was pulled back into a loose braid. No makeup. Just exhaustion and tension, dressed in scrubs and guilt. I paused at the door. For a moment I wondered what version of him she'd known. Which mask he'd worn with her. Was he tender? Dominant? Broken? Did he cry to her about how misunderstood he was? Did she believe it? She looked up and our eyes met. No hostility. Just confusion. Pain. Recognition. She stood awkwardly. I'm his wife, I said. She sat. So did I. Neither of us spoke for a while. Just sat there. Two women connected by a man who had carved separate lives out of the same set of lies. Finally, she broke the silence. "I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't." Her voice cracked. I nodded. "I believe you. Because I did. And somehow that made it worse." He hadn't even given me the dignity of being the only one deceived. "How long?" I asked, not entirely sure I wanted the answer. She swallowed. "A little over 2 years." I blinked. That was longer than I thought. Longer than most marriages last these days. "He told me he was separated," she said, eyes down. "Said you were living apart. Said you were the one who didn't want to let go." Of course he did. He always made himself the victim. The reluctant hero. The man torn between duty and destiny. "Did he ever mention my name?" I asked. She shook her head. "Only once. Said it was painful to talk about. Said you were cold. Controlling. Said you used to cheat on him." I let out a breath. Almost a laugh. "He said I cheated?" She looked up, shame burning behind her eyes. "I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize," I said quietly. "He played both of us. She stopped, rubbed her temple. "I loved him." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, me too." We sat there, staring at each other like reflections. Different hair, different clothes, different lives, but the same wreckage behind our ribs. She reached into her purse and pulled out a ring box. "He gave me this," she said. "Said it wasn't an engagement ring, just a promise." Promise. The word made my stomach tighten. Inside was a thin band with a small emerald. Tasteful. Subtle. A lie dressed in elegance. "I thought he was going to propose soon," she said. "We'd been looking at apartments." That hit harder than I expected. Because while I'd been repainting our guest room and meal prepping his favorite lunches, he'd been building a future with someone else. A future he stole from me. From her. From all of us. "Do you want to destroy him?" I asked quietly. She looked up, startled. I didn't blink. "Because I do," I added. "Not with violence. Not with drama. But with silence. Precision. Proof. I want to take away the life he thinks he controls." Her mouth opened slightly. Then she nodded. "Tell me what you need." And just like that, we became allies. She gave me everything: texts, photos, voice messages, his calendar invites, emails he sent from his Jamie account. She even forwarded me the lease application they'd filled out together the week prior. He was going to leave me. Not after a fight. Not after a confession. But silently. He was going to disappear. Reinvention perfected. But I'd gotten ahead of him. And now? Now I had her on my side too. When I got home, he was already there. In the kitchen. Cooking pasta. A glass of wine waiting for me on the counter. "Hey babe," he smiled. "I made that lemon cream thing you like." I smiled back. "You're amazing." And I meant it. Because the more I let him think he was safe, the harder it would hit when the truth dropped. He kissed my cheek, stirred the sauce. I watched him from across the island, not as my husband, not as Jamie, but as a mark. A man walking toward the edge of his own undoing, blissfully unaware of the cliff. Because what he didn't know. The lawyer was done. The account transfers were complete. The lease was nullified. And by tomorrow morning, his office would receive a file labeled Jamie, full of receipts, photos, messages, and a note. From me. And from Elle. Because if he wanted to live two lives, he could lose both. The morning it all unraveled, the house was quiet. He left like he always did. Kiss on the cheek, thermos in hand, tie slightly crooked. I straightened it for him like I had for years, fingers brushing over the same knot I used to think symbolized routine, love, normalcy. Now it felt like a noose he'd tied himself. Don't forget, dinner with the Carters on Friday, I reminded him sweetly. He smiled. Wouldn't miss it. And then he was gone. I watched from the window as he pulled out of the driveway, humming some tune with the windows down. He had no idea. Not yet. But the countdown had started. I waited 15 minutes, then picked up the phone and dialed my attorney. It's time, I said. She didn't even need clarification. The email was already scheduled. At 8:45 a.m. it would land in the inbox of his company's ethics committee, his boss, and his boss's boss. Subject line. Conduct review. Immediate attention required. Inside. The full dossier. Double life. Financial irregularities. Conflict of interest. Screenshots showing him using company funds to cover business trips that were actually trysts. A work laptop filled with encrypted folders he thought he'd erased. He hadn't. She found everything. The digital trail was damning. Precise. Undeniable. But that wasn't all. A second email went to his personal contacts, family, friends, even his brother. That one was more poetic. A calm, measured letter from me, explaining without venom what had happened, attaching photos, forwarding messages, laying out the timeline. No insults, no rage, just truth, because sometimes the cleanest knife cuts the deepest. I sent it from a burner email I'd set up the week prior. No name, no trace, just, thought you should know. And then I waited. I didn't go to work, didn't clean, didn't cook. I just sat by the window watching the street, waiting for the storm to land. It started at 10:12 a.m. A call from him. I let it ring. Then another. Then a voicemail. His voice laced with confusion. Hey, something's going on. I just got pulled into a meeting. Can you call me? I didn't. Because 5 minutes later, his mother called. Then his brother. Then his best friend from college, the one who gave the toast at our wedding. And finally, Elle, she texted. He knows. It's happening. At 11:06 a.m. he walked back through the door. I was still at the window. He looked like someone had punched him in the gut. Tie loose. Face pale. Hands trembling. You did this? He asked, barely above a whisper. I turned slowly, met his eyes. Didn't flinch. I showed them who you are. His mouth opened, then shut. He looked like he was trying to form words, excuses, anything. I can explain. No, I said calmly. You could have explained. Months ago. Years ago. You chose silence. He took a shaky step forward. You don't understand. I understand everything, Jamie. He winced when I said it. I stepped toward him slowly. Not angry. Just resolute. I know about Elle. I know about the others. I know about the fake names, the burner accounts, the cash withdrawals. I know about the ring. The apartment. The passwords. The lies. He collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. I didn't mean to hurt you. That made me laugh. Soft. Bitter. You didn't mean to. You just did. He looked up and for a moment the mask dropped. The charming husband, the smooth liar, the man with an answer for everything gone. Just a scared, broken boy underneath. Please, he whispered. Don't take everything. I tilted my head. Everything. He nodded. My job. My reputation. My family. You didn't think about that when you were screwing strangers in hotel rooms, did you? His lips trembled. I leaned down level with him. You didn't just cheat, Jamie. You constructed an alternate universe. And now? That universe is gone. He tried to reach for my hand. I pulled away. I'm leaving tomorrow, I said. The house will be transferred to my name. The accounts have been split. My lawyer has already filed the paperwork. You'll be served by end of week. His eyes widened. But this is my house. Not anymore. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Then I stopped, turned back. You always said you were afraid of being trapped. That monogamy was a cage. He didn't respond. So I opened the door, I said softly. Now go be free. And I left. I didn't cry. Not when I closed the door behind me. Not when I drove away. Not even when I pulled into the driveway of the rental I'd secretly signed for 2 weeks earlier. Using my maiden name. I was done crying for him. The woman I was a year ago might have wept in the shower, curled up on the bathroom floor, begged for closure or explanations or one last apology. But she was gone. And what took her place? She had plans. That evening I unpacked only what I needed: 1 suitcase, 1 box of files, 1 bottle of wine. Elle had texted me earlier. He's been calling non-stop. I blocked him. Good. I responded, he's going to spiral. Let him. She replied with a single word. Finally. It was strange, finding a kind of sisterhood in someone I once would have called the other woman. But betrayal, I've learned, doesn't follow clean borders. Spills. It blends. And when the smoke clears, sometimes your only ally is the one who bled beside you. The next morning the headlines started. His company was discreet but not silent. The internal scandal, his misuse of funds, his inappropriate behavior on corporate time, was too big to hide. Especially with screenshots floating around board members' inboxes. I hadn't sent it to the press. But someone had. Maybe a disgruntled coworker. Maybe Elle. Maybe fate. Didn't matter. By noon he was suspended without pay pending investigation. By Friday he was gone. Let go quietly, of course. No lawsuit. No statement. Just removed. Scrubbed. But the internet never forgets. And neither do the people you climb over on your way up. His LinkedIn vanished. Then his Twitter. Then his name from the company site. I watched it all from my quiet rental, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, a blanket wrapped around my legs, the fireplace humming. It was peaceful. The first time in years that peace didn't feel like silence before a storm. A week later I received a letter. Not from him. From his mother. Handwritten. Shaky script. Expensive stationery. She called me the good one. Said she'd always wondered why Jamie seemed so restless. So slippery. I see it now, she wrote. I'm sorry I didn't then. I didn't write back. Some things don't need a reply. But I kept the letter. I needed reminders not of who he was but of who I used to be. The woman who tolerated less than she deserved. Who accepted crumbs and called them a meal. She wasn't welcome here anymore. And as for Jamie, he called once. A number I didn't recognize. Probably a new phone. I answered. He said nothing at first. Just breathed. Then finally, do you feel better? I almost laughed. Do you? Silence. He said, you ruined my life. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling like it had answers. No, I said. You did that all on your own. Then I hung up. That was the last time I heard his voice. But I saw his name pop up again weeks later. This time attached to a GoFundMe. He was looking for help getting back on his feet. Framed it like he was laid off unfairly. Blamed a vindictive ex. I didn't share it. I didn't comment. But I read every reply. Every stranger who asked for proof. Every high school friend who said, wasn't this the guy who cheated on his wife? Every ex-coworker who responded, good luck. You'll need it. His reputation wasn't just ruined. It was remembered. As it should be. Meanwhile I was thriving. I'd gone back to school quietly. Something small, something mine. I was sleeping better. Breathing deeper. I started journaling again. Cooking again. Laughing again. And not once did I wonder where he was. Because I already knew. He was exactly where I left him. Alone. Facing a version of himself he couldn't run from anymore. And I was finally free. They don't tell you what happens after the war ends. After the dust settles and your hands stop shaking. After the phone stops ringing and the inbox quiets down. After the last enemy has fallen and you've walked away with nothing but your name stitched to your bones. No one talks about then. Because healing isn't cinematic. It's slow. It's awkward. And it's lonely in a way that feels different from heartbreak. Like standing in an empty house that used to be on fire. I remember sitting in the middle of my new living room. Cardboard boxes all around me. Not one photo on the wall and just breathing. No footsteps upstairs. No second toothbrush in the bathroom. No lies hiding in pockets. Just space. And at first, it felt unbearable. The silence. The absence. I kept expecting him to burst through the door and offer some joke, some excuse, some attempt to charm his way back into a life he burned to the ground. But the door never opened. Because I hadn't just locked it. I'd changed the address. And that was when I realized. I had no idea who I was without him. Not the woman I'd become with him. The appeaser. The fixer. The caretaker. The one who swallowed doubts and called it grace. But me. Alone. Undefined. Unattached. And so, I started small. I bought a bike. Just a cheap one, powder blue with a squeaky bell. Rode it through side streets with no destination. I wandered into bookstores without checking the time. I let the sun hit my face without makeup, without purpose, without anyone watching. I said yes to brunches. I said no to guilt. I even went on a date, just one, with a barista named Eli who had kind eyes and didn't ask about my past. We talked about terrible horror movies and favorite childhood cereals and laughed until my ribs hurt. At the end of the night, he didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "You seem like someone who's relearning how to breathe." I smiled. He wasn't wrong. We didn't go out again. And that was okay. Because I wasn't looking to fill the space Jamie left. I was learning how to live in it. One day I got an email from Elle. She'd moved to Boston. Started therapy. Was dating someone new. Slowly. Cautiously. She ended her message with, "You saved me. Just thought you should know." I stared at those words for a long time. Not because they surprised me. But because I finally believed them. We'd saved each other. From him. From ourselves. From the version of womanhood we'd been taught to tolerate. I replied, "You saved me too." Then I deleted the burner email we'd used to coordinate our entire plan. It was over. And not just the scandal. Not just the revenge. But the chase. That exhausting, soul-depleting chase to prove I mattered to someone who never deserved me in the first place. Now, I mattered to me. And that was enough. I saw him once months later. By accident. A grocery store on the far side of town I never used to shop at. I was reaching for a jar of pasta sauce when I heard it. His voice. Lower. Slower. Almost uncertain. I turned instinct more than intention and there he was. He looked smaller. Not physically, though he had lost weight. But diminished. The way someone looks when life stops orbiting around them. When no one's rehearsing applause anymore. He was holding a basket of frozen dinners and cheap wine. Wearing a hoodie that didn't quite fit and jeans that hung like they didn't belong to him. He hadn't seen me yet. I could have turned. Walked out. Avoided the whole moment like a scene I never auditioned for. But I didn't. I waited. And when he finally glanced up, our eyes locked. His face shifted. Recognition. Regret. That old familiar flicker of charm. Rising like muscle memory. He opened his mouth. But I spoke first. "Hi, Jamie." He flinched. Because that name, his name, wasn't safe anymore. It was a mirror now. A reminder of everything he couldn't run from. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said, almost a whisper. I nodded. I didn't think I'd care this little. He winced like I'd slapped him. But I didn't feel cruel. Just honest. "You look good," he added. And I did. Not because of makeup or clothes or posture, but because I was free. He looked like someone waiting to be forgiven. And I realized he never would be. Not because I hated him. But because I no longer needed him to be anything. Not a husband. Not a villain. Not a chapter. Just a fact. Something that happened. A fire I walked out of not to seek vengeance, but to find myself in the smoke. I nodded once softly. "Take care of yourself." Then I turned. Walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Because this time I wasn't leaving him. I was walking toward me. The me who sets boundaries. The me who doesn't apologize for asking questions. The me who lives with both hands on the wheel. Never again trusting a man who refuses to draw his own map. That version of me? She's not perfect. But she's real. And she's mine.